the Witwatersrand Gold Rush did not begin with chaos. It began with calculation. Gold was discovered in South Africa in the late 19th century, embedded deep within a vast geological formation. Unlike earlier rushes, this gold did not lie in rivers or on the surface. It was buried, extensive, and difficult to reach. From the start, this changed everything. According to historical records, extracting gold from the Witwatersrand required more than tools and endurance. It required capital, infrastructure, and coordination on a scale previously unseen in gold mining. This was not a rush that rewarded individual discovery. It rewarded organization. The gold was real. Its quantity was unprecedented, but access to it narrowed almost immediately. As mining deepened, operations consolidated. Text ownership concentrated. Labour expanded, but control did not. Johannesburg rose quickly around the goldfields, transforming from open land into an industrial city within a few years. Wealth accumulated at the top, risk and labour accumulated below. For a brief moment, it appeared that another gold rush might follow familiar patterns. People arrived. Claims were marked. Hope circulated, but the Witwatersrand did not remain open long enough for most people to participate meaningfully. This was gold that demanded systems, not individuals. So how did the largest gold discovery in history reshape global wealth, while leaving most of those closest to it with very little? And what happens when gold grows too large to be found by people at all? Text the nature of the Witwatersrand gold deposit made individual mining impractical almost immediately. This was not surface gold. It was locked inside deep rock formations that extended for miles. According to geological records, the gold-bearing reef ran continuously beneath the land, but at depths that increased quickly. Reaching it required shafts, heavy machinery, and engineered ventilation. Simple tools were not enough. From the outset, mining demanded capital investment. Equipment had to be purchased. Labour had to be organised. Infrastructure had to be built before extraction could even begin. This created an early divide. Those with access to funding could participate meaningfully. Those without it could not. Unlike California or the Klondike, there was little room for improvisation. Text, there were no shallow deposits to exploit while learning. No transitional phase where individuals could operate independently. The gold did not allow experimentation. As a result, claims were quickly absorbed into larger operations. Small holdings were consolidated. Mining rights became corporate assets rather than personal opportunities. This process happened quietly but decisively. Within a short time, the Witwatersrand ceased to function as a traditional gold rush. It became an industrial project. Labour was still required in enormous quantities, but ownership and decision-making narrowed rapidly. People arrived expecting to search for gold. Instead, many found themselves searching for work. The gold existed beneath their feet, but it was already out of reach. Text, the Witwatersrand did not take decades to concentrate power. It took years. Once the scale of the gold deposit became clear, ownership patterns shifted rapidly. Mining rights were accumulated, merged, and reorganized into fewer hands. According to historical records, financial groups and mining syndicates moved quickly to secure control over the most promising sections of the reef. Legal frameworks favoured those who could formalize claims, raise capital, and sustain long-term operations. Speed mattered. Those who hesitated lost access. Those who consolidated gained leverage. This was not a slow drift toward corporate mining. It was an accelerated transition. By the time many individuals understood how the system was forming, it had already closed around them. Text, Johannesburg reflected this change almost immediately. The city grew not as a frontier settlement, but as an industrial hub. Banks, offices, and corporate headquarters appeared alongside mining infrastructure. decision-making centralized even as labor expanded outward. For workers, this meant limited options. Mining jobs were available, ownership was not. Wages replaced claims. Shifts replaced exploration. Risk moved downward while control moved upward. Unlike earlier gold rushes, there was little ambiguity about this arrangement. The system did not pretend to offer equal opportunity. It offered employment. For some, this was stability. For others, it was the end of expectation. The Witwatersrand did not slowly transition from rush to industry. It skipped the illusion entirely. Text gold was present in unprecedented quantity, but the structure surrounding it ensured that discovery and reward were separated almost from the beginning. As the Witwatersrand mines expanded, they absorbed labour on a massive scale. Gold production increased steadily. So did the need for workers. Unlike earlier gold rushes, participation no longer meant searching. It meant employment. According to historical records, mining companies required thousands of labourers to operate shafts, move ore, maintain equipment, and sustain continuous extraction. The work was dangerous, repetitive, and physically demanding. Pay was predictable. Ownership was not. This distinction mattered. For many workers, mining offered income, but no path upward. Wages covered survival. Text they rarely accumulated enough to alter long-term prospects. Risk, however, remained high. Accidents were common. Working conditions were harsh. Depth introduced new dangers: heat, poor air, and structural instability. Yet leaving was difficult. The mines became the primary economic engine of the region. Alternative employment was limited. Communities formed around mining activity, tying livelihood directly to production schedules. This created dependency. Gold did not circulate among workers as wealth. It circulated above them as revenue. The system rewarded consistency rather than discovery. Output mattered more than insight. Time spent underground replaced the chance of a sudden find. For those who had arrived hoping to claim gold, this shift was decisive. They did not fail. Text they were absorbed. The Witwatersrand transformed gold from an object of pursuit into a unit of production, and in doing so, it changed what participation meant. Gold was no longer something to be found. It was something to be extracted continuously, predictably, and at scale. The Witwatersrand did more than reorganize mining. It reorganized society. As production expanded, clear divisions formed between those who controlled extraction and those who carried it out. These divisions were not temporary. They became structural. According to historical accounts, housing, movement, and access to resources were increasingly regulated around the needs of mining companies. Communities grew, but not organically. They were planned, segmented, and controlled. Workers lived close to the mines. Text managers and owners lived apart. Distance reinforced hierarchy. This separation shaped daily life. Opportunities did not circulate freely. Education, advancement, and security aligned with position in the system rather than effort alone. Gold amplified existing inequalities instead of dissolving them. The scale of the operation required discipline and predictability. That discipline extended beyond the mines and into social organization. Time was regulated. Movement was monitored. Labor was standardized. For those at the top, this created stability and growth. For those below, it created limitation. The promise of gold no longer functioned as a shared horizon. It became an abstract force, present everywhere, accessible to few. Johannesburg continued to expand, fueled by gold revenue. Text, but prosperity did not spread evenly through its population. The city stood as evidence of success. Its structure revealed how that success was distributed. Gold had transformed the region. but it had done so by building systems that benefited from concentration rather than diffusion. And once those systems were in place, they did not require belief to continue operating. They required only labour. The gold extracted from the Witwatersrand did not remain in South Africa. It moved outward. According to historical financial records, gold from the Witwatersrand flowed into global markets at a scale unmatched by any previous gold discovery. It supported currencies, stabilised banking systems, and underwrote international trade. This gold did not circulate locally as prosperity. Text, it circulated globally as leverage. Major financial centres benefited first. London absorbed much of the gold through banking institutions and trade networks. Gold reserves strengthened national balances. Capital accumulated far from the mines, where the metal was extracted. For mining companies, this was the objective. The Witwatersrand was not designed to create local wealth. It was designed to supply global demand. Workers exchanged labour for wages. Companies exchanged gold for capital. Governments exchanged stability for continued extraction. This chain moved value upward and outward. Those closest to the gold were the furthest from its benefits. Even as production expanded, local conditions changed slowly. Infrastructure existed to serve mining efficiency, not social mobility. Text, investment favoured extraction capacity over long-term development. The Witwatersrand thus connected distant economies while disconnecting local ones. Gold linked South Africa to the financial core of the world, but it did so without redistributing control. For the global system, the discovery was transformative. For the people working above the reef, it was largely static. The gold changed how the world functioned. It did not change who owned it. Once the Witwatersrand mining system stabilised, it became difficult to imagine an alternative. The infrastructure was too deep, the capital investment too large, the output too central to global markets. According to historical accounts, by the early 20th century, the idea of individual gold mining in the region was no longer realistic. Text, the reef extended far underground. Access required machinery and coordination beyond the reach of private individuals. This closed the door permanently. Earlier gold rushes had evolved over time. They began with individuals and later shifted toward larger operations. The Witwatersrand reversed that sequence. It industrialised first. Personal opportunity never fully existed. As a result, there was no transition period where independent miners could adapt or scale up gradually. They either became workers within the system or exited entirely. Most stayed. The mines offered predictability in a region where alternatives were limited. Leaving meant abandoning the only stable source of income available to many families. Over time, this locked entire communities into a single economic function. Text, gold extraction did not pause. It continued year after year, pushing deeper underground and demanding constant labour. The system no longer depended on belief or expectation. It depended on continuity. For individuals, this meant that gold was no longer something to pursue. It was something that structured life itself, schedules, risks, and futures. The Witwatersrand did not merely change how gold was mined. It removed the possibility that gold could ever be claimed personally again. And once that possibility disappeared, so did the idea that proximity to wealth implied access to it. As decades passed, the Witwatersrand ceased to feel like a discovery site. It became infrastructure. Mining continued deeper underground, year after year, long after the initial rush had faded from memory. Text, the rhythm of extraction replaced the urgency of arrival. According to historical records, entire generations were born into a landscape already shaped by mining. For them, gold was not an opportunity or a gamble. It was background. The physical environment reflected this permanence. Mine shafts dominated the terrain. Tailings piles accumulated. Water systems and transport lines existed primarily to serve extraction. The land no longer suggested possibility. It suggested function. Communities adapted accordingly. Daily life revolved around shifts, wages, and company schedules. Risk became normalized. Danger was accepted as part of routine employment rather than extraordinary pursuit. The earlier promise of transformation, so central to other gold rushes, was absent. There was no sense that one discovery might change everything. There was only continuity. This had subtle consequences. People adjusted expectations downward without dramatic failure. Ambition shifted from sudden success to stability. Survival replaced aspiration. The gold remained vast. Production remained high, but the human experience around it became smaller, narrower, and more predictable. The Witwatersrand did not leave behind abandoned towns or empty camps. It left behind a working landscape, efficient, productive, and constrained. Gold had reshaped the ground permanently, and in doing so, it reshaped what people believed was possible within it. Measured by volume alone, the Witwatersrand stands apart. According to historical estimates, more gold has been extracted from this region than from any other single goldfield in history. Its output reshaped global reserves, currencies, and financial systems across the 20th century. By that measure, the discovery was an undeniable success. But history does not measure impact by volume alone. When examined through the experience of those closest to the gold, the outcome appears more complex. Unlike California or the Klondike, the Witwatersrand did not produce a generation of independent miners who briefly changed their fortunes. It produced a permanent labor force. Opportunity did not circulate and then disappear. It never fully appeared. Historians later noted this distinction. The Witwatersrand was not a rush defined by chance. It was a system defined by structure. People did not arrive hoping to be lucky. They arrived to be employed. This changed how success was understood. In earlier gold rushes, failure was personal and often temporary. In the Witwatersrand, limitation was structural and enduring. Gold did not disappoint individuals one by one. It organized them collectively. From a distance, the region appeared prosperous. From within, it appeared constrained. History recorded the numbers, ounces extracted, profits earned, cities built. It did not always record the narrowing of possibility that accompanied them. The Witwatersrand succeeded in producing gold at a scale never seen before. What it did not produce was access, and that absence would become one of its most lasting characteristics. Over time, the Witwatersrand changed how gold itself was understood. In earlier rushes, gold symbolized possibility. It represented a break from routine hierarchy and predictability. Even when most failed, the idea of sudden change remained central. In the Witwatersrand, that idea disappeared. Gold no longer suggested escape. It suggested permanence. According to later economic and social analysis, this shift marked a turning point in the history of resource extraction. Gold became less about discovery and more about management. Risk was no longer personal. It was absorbed by systems. Reward was no longer uncertain. It was scheduled, forecasted, and distributed according to position. For individuals, this altered expectations deeply. People did not arrive believing they might become wealthy. They arrived believing they might remain employed. That distinction mattered. It changed how effort was evaluated, how time was valued, and how ambition was framed. Gold had become something that sustained institutions rather than individuals. Its presence no longer disrupted social order. It reinforced it. This was not accidental. The structure that developed around the Witwatersrand ensured continuity. Continuity favoured planning over chance, skill over surprise. As a result, gold lost one of its oldest associations. It was no longer the metal that might change your life. It was the metal that would keep things running as they were. For the global system, this was stability. For those closest to the mines, it was limitation. Taxed, and once gold stopped representing opportunity, it stopped needing to be found by people at all. The Witwatersrand did not fail the people who worked above it. It simply was never designed for them to succeed individually. Gold was present in unprecedented quantity. It was extracted efficiently, continuously, and for generations, but it flowed through structures that absorbed value before it could reach those closest to the work. This was not a broken gold rush. It was a completed one. The system functioned exactly as intended. Gold stabilized currencies. It strengthened institutions. It supported global trade and industrial expansion, and it did so by removing uncertainty. Chance disappeared. Discovery became irrelevant. Access was replaced by assignment. Text for those who laboured in the mines. This meant that proximity no longer mattered. Being near the gold did not imply ownership, opportunity, or transformation. Gold existed beneath their feet, but its destination lay elsewhere. The Witwatersrand marked a turning point. It showed that wealth no longer needed secrecy or mystery to remain concentrated. It only needed scale, infrastructure, and control. Once gold became too deep to be reached by hand, it became too large to belong to people at all. What remained was stability, productive, enduring, and unequal. The largest gold discovery in history did not create a generation of wealthy miners. It created a system that outgrew them, and in doing so, it revealed something permanent. Text that when gold becomes industrial, it stops being a promise and becomes a process.